In the scorching heat of Egypt's Theban desert, nestled among the ruins of an ancient civilization, a team of archaeologists embarked on what would become one of the most significant discoveries in the history of Egyptology. The year was 1904, and the sands of time had long buried the magnificent city of Thebes, the capital of Egypt during the New Kingdom. This was no ordinary archaeological dig. It was a search for the forgotten past of one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs, Amenhotep III, and his beloved Queen Tiye. Little did the team know that beneath their feet lay a monumental secret hidden for millennia. The expedition had been focused on exploring the remnants of the mortuary temple of Amenhotep III. Once a towering structure built to honor the mighty ruler and the gods, the temple had fallen victim to earthquakes and floods, leaving behind only ruins. However, as with so many treasures in Egypt, what had fallen into ruin was still only partially uncovered. The archaeologists were drawn to a section of the temple that had remained largely untouched by previous excavations. Something about the area felt different, as though the ground itself held a story eager to be revealed. After days of meticulous digging and careful removal of layers of sand and stone, a glimmer of polished black stone emerged from the earth. The team worked feverishly, brushing away centuries of dust, and there, before their eyes, began to appear the likeness of a face, an intricately carved face, with eyes gazing towards eternity. It was the first glimpse of the colossal statue of Amenhotep III, a masterpiece of royal grandeur. As the full form of the statue was revealed, it became clear that this was no ordinary figure. The craftsmanship was unparalleled. Every detail, from the pharaoh's headdress to his serene expression, was carved with meticulous precision. His seated figure, exuding power and divinity, evoked a sense of awe that could only come from the realization that they were standing face to face with the representation of a ruler worshipped as a god. But this was just the beginning. The archaeologists were ecstatic about the discovery of Amenhotep III's statue, but the desert was not yet done revealing its secrets. As they continued to explore the site, a second statue began to emerge from the sand, almost as if it had been waiting patiently to be found alongside the great pharaoh. This time, the figure was not that of a king, but of a queen, a woman whose importance in Egypt's history rivaled that of her husband, Amenhotep III. It was Queen Tiye, one of the most powerful and influential women in ancient Egypt. Unlike many queens of the time, Tiye was not of royal blood, but she rose to become one of Egypt's most revered figures. She was a commoner who had captured the heart of the pharaoh, but her influence extended far beyond the typical role of a queen consort. In fact, Tiye was known to have played a significant role in the political and diplomatic affairs of Egypt, advising her husband and even corresponding with foreign leaders. Her power and wisdom were legendary, and it was clear that she was more than just a royal wife. She was a force in her own right. The statue of Tiye, standing tall and regal, was a stunning testament to her stature. Carved from the same dark stone as Amenhotep's statue, her likeness captured the essence of a woman who had been both revered and feared in her time. Her eyes, sharp and piercing, seemed to hold the weight of centuries of wisdom, as if she could still see through the veils of time. The details of her crown, adorned with symbols of both Upper and Lower Egypt, signified her status as a queen who united the realms through her marriage to Amenhotep. But beyond her crown and the royal garments, there was something deeper, something almost mystical about her presence. As the archaeologists marveled at the statues, they couldn't help but feel as if these ancient figures were not mere representations of the past, but living embodiments of a power that transcended time. There was a palpable sense of energy around the statues, a feeling that these were not just carvings of stone, but that they carried the spirit of the pharaoh and his queen, still watching over the land they once ruled. The discovery of Amenhotep III and Tiye's statues raised as many questions as it answered. Why had these masterpieces been buried for so long? What stories had they witnessed during their millennia beneath the desert sands? Were there more hidden treasures waiting to be uncovered? Or perhaps more enigmatic figures lying in wait to tell their tales? The dig site became a place of mystery, where each discovery seemed to pull the archaeologists deeper into the intricate web of Egypt's past. And yet, the greatest mystery of all was not the statues themselves, but the relationship they represented. Amenhotep III and Queen Tiye had been partners in more than just marriage. They had ruled as equals, a rare dynamic in the ancient world. Their statues, side by side, seemed to echo this partnership, standing together as if they were still reigning over the lands of Egypt. The sheer size and grandeur of the statues suggested that their legacy was meant to endure for eternity. But the question remained: what had caused these mighty rulers to be forgotten for so long, only to be rediscovered in this moment? As the archaeologists studied the statues, they began to notice subtle details that hinted at deeper layers of symbolism. The placement of the statues, the specific choice of stone, and even the positioning of their hands all suggested a level of intent that went beyond mere artistry. Amenhotep's calm, almost serene expression was contrasted by Tiye's more intense gaze, as if to signify their complementary roles as ruler and advisor. Together, they embodied the ideal balance of power and wisdom, strength and strategy. It was as though the statues were trying to communicate something, a message from the past, waiting to be decoded by those who would listen closely enough. As the archaeologists delved deeper into the meaning behind these statues, they couldn't help but feel a connection to the ancient world in a way that transcended the physical remnants. These were more than just carvings of stone. They were symbols of a unique era in Egypt's history, where divine rule and human intellect blended seamlessly in the figures of Amenhotep III and Queen Tiye. The sense of mystery surrounding their partnership and their individual legacies only deepened as more discoveries from their reign were unearthed. Amenhotep III's reign was a golden age for Egypt, a period of peace, prosperity, and monumental architectural achievements. He was a builder king, commissioning temples, palaces, and statues on a scale that had rarely been seen before. But it wasn't just the grandeur of his constructions that set him apart. It was his ability to rule with such stability that Egypt flourished for nearly 4 decades under his reign. The pharaoh had a deep understanding of diplomacy and politics, and his rule was marked by alliances with foreign powers that kept Egypt at the center of the ancient world. Yet, there was something more to Amenhotep's success than just his own abilities. There was Tiye. Unlike many queens, Tiye did not stay in the background, relegated to ceremonial duties. She was a partner in every sense of the word, involved in the decision-making process, and often acting as the pharaoh's most trusted advisor. In fact, there are records that suggest Tiye communicated directly with foreign leaders, negotiating on behalf of Egypt when necessary. This level of involvement was nearly unheard of for a queen, making Tiye not just a companion to the pharaoh, but a powerful political figure in her own right. The statues seem to reflect this balance of power between them. While Amenhotep's statue radiated divine kingship, his larger-than-life form sitting in majestic stillness, Tiye's statue exuded a quiet strength, a presence that was commanding without needing the overt symbols of pharaonic authority. Her power was subtle but undeniable, and it was clear that she was every bit the equal of her husband, if not more in certain respects. As the team of archaeologists studied the intricacies of Tiye's statue, they noticed something fascinating. Unlike many queens who were depicted as smaller or subordinate to the pharaoh, Tiye's statue was nearly the same size as Amenhotep's. This was no accident. It was a deliberate statement about her role, an assertion of her status as a queen who was not merely a consort, but a co-ruler. The choice to immortalize her in this way spoke volumes about how she was perceived by her people, and perhaps even how she perceived herself. But even as these revelations came to light, the deeper question of why these statues had been buried and forgotten remained. Could it have been intentional, a deliberate attempt to erase their legacy? Or was it simply the inevitable consequence of time and nature, as temples crumbled and new rulers sought to build their own monuments over the old? The answer was unclear, but the statues themselves seemed to defy the forces that had sought to bury them. They stood as a testament to the enduring nature of their story, a story that was only now being rediscovered. The archaeologists couldn't shake the feeling that the statues were more than just artifacts of the past. They were messages from another era, filled with layers of meaning that had yet to be fully understood. There was something almost eerie about the way the statues gazed out into the world, as if they were not just representations of Amenhotep and Tiye, but living witnesses to the unfolding of history. The statues had survived millennia of destruction and decay, and now they were once again in the light, ready to tell their story to a new generation. The discovery of the statues also raised tantalizing possibilities. If these two statues had been found, what else could still lie hidden beneath the sands of Thebes? The mortuary temple of Amenhotep III was vast, and much of it remained unexplored. Could there be more statues of the royal family, or perhaps treasures that had been sealed away for thousands of years? The archaeologists knew they had only scratched the surface of what could be one of the most important archaeological sites in Egypt. As the dig continued, the sense of anticipation among the archaeologists grew. Every brushstroke that uncovered more of the site seemed to bring them closer to unraveling the mysteries of Amenhotep III and Queen Tiye's reign. The discovery of the two monumental statues had captivated not only the archaeological team, but also the world beyond. News of the find had spread rapidly, with scholars and historians eager to understand what these figures might reveal about one of the most powerful dynasties in Egyptian history. But with each day, new questions arose. The statues, as remarkable as they were, felt like part of a larger puzzle. The intricate details in the carving suggested that these were not simply decorative pieces, but representations of something much deeper, perhaps even spiritual. Amenhotep III, known as the Dazzling Sun, had positioned himself as not just a ruler, but as a living god during his lifetime. His relationship with the gods of Egypt was complex, and many believed he had a special connection to the sun god Ra, with whom he was often associated in the inscriptions. This connection to divinity was reflected in his statue, where Amenhotep III sat as a serene, almost otherworldly figure, his calm expression giving the impression of a ruler who had transcended the mortal realm. There was a profound sense of peace and authority in his image, as though he was watching over the entire kingdom from a place beyond time and space. Yet the real mystery lay in the fact that his wife, Tiye, was given equal prominence in these depictions, something that was unheard of for most queens. Tiye's statue, while embodying strength, seemed to possess an enigmatic quality that drew the archaeologists into her gaze. Unlike her husband's divine calm, Tiye's expression was more complex, almost as if she carried the weight of secrets long forgotten. She had been a queen unlike any other, and the more the team studied her statue, the more they realized how significant her role in Egypt's political and religious life must have been. Tiye had been involved in diplomatic relations with foreign nations and had a reputation for being a shrewd negotiator. Could her statue be a symbol of the immense influence she wielded behind the scenes? As they explored further, the archaeologists began to uncover other, smaller artifacts that added layers to the story of this royal couple. Inscriptions on tablets found nearby depicted Tiye not merely as a queen, but as a priestess, deeply involved in the religious rites of the time. She had played a key role in the worship of the gods, particularly in the growing veneration of the sun god, not just a consort, but a key architect of the religious transformations that would shake Egypt to its core in the years following her reign. The question of Tiye's religious influence brought to light another mystery. Amenhotep III's son, Akhenaten, would later break from the traditional pantheon of Egyptian gods and focus Egypt's worship on the Aten, the sun disk, in what many scholars consider the first instance of monotheism. Some theorize that it was Queen Tiye's deep connection to the sun cult that paved the way for her son's radical religious reforms. Though Akhenaten's reign would come after the death of his father, there were hints that the seeds of this religious shift had been planted during Amenhotep and Tiye's rule. Could Tiye have been the force behind this dramatic change? Was her influence over her son so strong that it shaped the future of Egypt's religious beliefs? The evidence was tantalizing, but inconclusive. The statues, though silent, seemed to suggest that Tiye's role was far more significant than previously understood. As the archaeologists pondered these questions, they couldn't help but feel that the statues were only giving them a glimpse of the true story, a story that was still unfolding beneath the sands. Meanwhile, as they continued to excavate the area around the statues, the team made another remarkable discovery. Hidden within the temple ruins were a series of carved reliefs that depicted scenes from the life of Amenhotep and Tiye. These carvings told a visual story of their reign, from grand celebrations and offerings to the gods to intimate moments between the king and queen. In one scene, Amenhotep is shown presenting offerings to the gods with Tiye by his side, her figure standing equal to his, a rare depiction of a queen sharing in the divine rites usually reserved for the pharaoh alone. Another relief depicted a festival known as the Sed Festival, a ceremonial event that marked the pharaoh's renewal of power. In this scene, Tiye is again portrayed not as a mere observer, but as an active participant, reinforcing the idea that her role in the royal court and in the religious life of Egypt was far beyond that of a traditional queen. These reliefs, combined with the towering statues, painted a picture of a unique partnership, one where power and influence were shared in ways that defied the norms of ancient Egyptian society. But for all the discoveries, there was still an underlying sense of mystery. Why had these statues and reliefs been hidden away, forgotten for centuries? Was it simply the passage of time, or had their legacy been deliberately obscured? The archaeologists couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone had wanted this story to remain buried. Perhaps there were forces at play, both in the ancient world and beyond, that sought to control how Amenhotep III and Tiye were remembered. As the sun began to set on the dig site each evening, casting long shadows over the statues of the king and queen, the archaeologists were reminded of the timelessness of the figures they had unearthed. The secrets of Amenhotep III and Queen Tiye were slowly being brought to light, but many questions still lingered in the air, waiting to be answered. The statues, now standing tall once again, were not just relics of a forgotten past. They were keys to understanding a complex and enigmatic chapter in the history of one of the world's greatest civilizations. As the excavation reached deeper into the layers of history, the archaeologists were faced with an ever-growing sense of intrigue. The grandeur of Amenhotep III and Queen Tiye's statues was only part of a much larger story that seemed to lie just beneath the surface. With each discovery, it became clear that this royal couple's legacy had been both meticulously crafted and mysteriously veiled by the passage of time. The statues, the reliefs, the artifacts, they all spoke to a reign of unmatched power and influence. Yet the question of why these magnificent works had been buried remained unanswered. The archaeologists began to focus their attention on the possible reasons behind the erasure of this monumental legacy. Egypt had seen many dynasties rise and fall, and it was not uncommon for successors to attempt to erase the memory of their predecessors in order to solidify their own rule. However, in the case of Amenhotep III and Queen Tiye, the circumstances seemed different. Their reign had been marked by peace and prosperity, and they were revered not only by the Egyptian people, but also by foreign nations. What could have prompted such a deliberate effort to conceal their story? One theory began to take shape. In the years following Amenhotep III's death, his son, Akhenaten, would embark on one of the most radical religious revolutions in Egypt's history. Akhenaten's rejection of the traditional gods in favor of the sole worship of the Aten, the sun disk, was a seismic shift that upended centuries of religious practice. This dramatic change, often referred to as the Amarna Revolution, sent shockwaves through Egyptian society and angered the powerful priesthood that had long controlled the religious life of the nation. Could Akhenaten's radical break from tradition have something to do with the burial of his parents' legacy? As the son of Amenhotep III and Queen Tiye, Akhenaten would have grown up under the influence of both his father's divine kingship and his mother's deep involvement in the sun cult. While Amenhotep had maintained a delicate balance between the traditional gods and his personal devotion to the sun god Ra, Akhenaten took this worship to an extreme, effectively dismantling the established religious order. In the aftermath of Akhenaten's reign, Egypt was thrown into chaos. His successors, including Tutankhamun, sought to restore the old religious practices and distance themselves from the radical monotheism that Akhenaten had imposed. This period, known as the Restoration, was marked by an effort to erase all traces of Akhenaten's rule, including the destruction of his statues, temples, and any references to the Aten. Could it be that in the frenzy to restore order, the legacy of Amenhotep III and Tiye had been swept away as well, unintentionally caught in the tide of religious and political upheaval? As the archaeologists considered this possibility, they uncovered another clue that pointed to a deliberate concealment of Amenhotep III's monuments. In a hidden chamber beneath the temple ruins, they discovered a series of broken stone tablets. These tablets, which once contained inscriptions praising Amenhotep's divine rule, had been shattered into pieces and buried beneath layers of rubble. It was as though someone had gone to great lengths to ensure that these records of his reign would not be easily found. The broken tablets only deepened the mystery. Who had done this and why? Was it an act of vengeance by those who opposed Akhenaten's religious reforms? Or had it been a calculated move by a later pharaoh to rewrite history and downplay the significance of Amenhotep III's reign? The evidence was fragmented, but the pieces of the puzzle were slowly starting to come together. The discovery of the tablets also shed new light on the relationship between Amenhotep III and the gods. In the inscriptions that could still be deciphered, the pharaoh was described as a living god who walked among his people, beloved by the gods and endowed with divine wisdom. This portrayal of Amenhotep as a god-king was not unusual for Egyptian rulers, but the sheer emphasis on his divinity in these inscriptions suggested that his relationship with the gods was central to his rule. More intriguingly, some of the surviving lines hinted at a special connection between Amenhotep and the Aten, the same sun deity that would later become the focal point of his son's religious revolution. The archaeologists could not ignore the significance of these findings. It was becoming increasingly clear that Amenhotep III's reign had been a turning point in Egyptian history, a period when the seeds of religious transformation were sown, only to fully blossom under Akhenaten's radical reforms. But what role had Queen Tiye played in all of this? Could she have been the bridge between her husband's divine kingship and her son's revolutionary ideas? As they continued to analyze the inscriptions, a pattern began to emerge. In many of the texts, Tiye was referred to not just as a queen, but as a mistress of wisdom and a mother of the gods. These titles, while flattering, seemed to suggest something more. That Tiye was seen as a figure of immense spiritual power, someone who had the ear of the gods and the ability to influence the course of divine and earthly affairs. Her prominence in these inscriptions reinforced the idea that she was not just a passive figure, but an active participant in the shaping of Egypt's religious future. The more they studied Tiye's role, the more the archaeologists realized that her influence may have extended far beyond what had previously been understood. She was not only the wife of a great pharaoh and the mother of a revolutionary king, she was a queen who had helped shape the very fabric of Egypt's religious and political life. Her statue, standing equal to that of Amenhotep, was not just a symbol of her power in life, but a testament to her lasting legacy. As the excavation drew to a close, the archaeologists couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at what they had uncovered. The statues of Amenhotep III and Queen Tiye were more than just artistic masterpieces. They were windows into a forgotten chapter of history, one filled with intrigue, power, and mystery. The story of this royal couple, buried for centuries beneath the sands, was only just beginning to be understood. Yet, even as they prepared to leave the site, the archaeologists knew that many questions remained unanswered. What other secrets might still lie hidden beneath the ruins of Thebes? Were there more clues waiting to be found that could shed light on the enigmatic relationship between Amenhotep, Tiye, and their son Akhenaten? The statues, now standing tall once more, seemed to hold their own secrets, whispering across the millennia to those willing to listen. In the end, the discovery of Amenhotep III and Queen Tiye statues was not just an archaeological triumph. It was a reminder of the enduring power of history, of how the stories of the past continue to shape our understanding of the present. And while many mysteries still surrounded these ancient figures, one thing was certain. Their legacy, once buried and forgotten, had now been brought back into the light, where it would continue to captivate and inspire for generations to come.